Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We will be starting in 1 minute. Hello, everyone. My name is Anurag Dhawan, and I am the External Relations Officer at the University of Toronto Scarborough. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this hashtag event. Moderating alongside me today, I'm happy to welcome Amelia Helpard, Vice President Operations for TMG, the marketing group at UTSC. Amelia is a fourth-year student in the MIB program. Her past experience has been in strategy and marketing, and earlier in 2020, she returned from Sydney, Australia after completing a work term and a study abroad term. Amelia will be moderating our Q&A session. Before I introduce our speaker for today, a few housekeeping announcements. I request if all attendees can please keep themselves on mute through the session. We will have some time to take questions at the end of the presentation via chat, so if you can please drop your questions there. We are also recording the session, and the recording would be mailed out to all attendees. And now to introduce our special guest for today, Gaelan Love. Gaelan is the product marketing lead at Microsoft Canada for the education segment, empowering students, educators, and administrators in K-12 through higher ed in Canada to achieve more. As a passionate advocate for workplace diversity, inclusion, and environmental sustainability, Gaelan increases visibility and drives impact for a more modern workplace. A 2009 graduate from McGill with concentrations in geography, economics, and business management, Gaelan actively promotes students of all backgrounds to explore careers in technology. It is my absolute pleasure to have you as our guest on hashtag today, Gaelan. It's over to you.
Amazing. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm assuming so. All right. Hi, my name is Gaelan Love, and thanks for inviting me to join you all today to talk about Product Marketing 101. I'm not a U of T student or however, a lot of members of my family are. My father and my brother both went to U of T's, and I grew up just down the street. So it may not be in my blood, but it's in the family blood. So happy to be here and talk to you more. So let me get my clicker going here. Awesome. So as I said, my name is Gaelan Love. My preferred pronouns are he, him. I am currently the product marketing lead for Microsoft and Education in Canada. My LinkedIn is there. Please feel free to QR code that and add me to your network if you want to connect. It's all there for you. And before we dive in, I also want to introduce someone very special, Paula.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula. I'm actually currently located on the West Coast, but I am the product marketing intern working with Gaelan for the next 8 months. I'm actually from Simon Fraser in my last year, so I'm sure I can relate to everyone here that's maybe looking for next opportunities. So maybe in the Q&A section, if there's any questions that pertain directly to the internship or my role or just more generally what that experience is like, I'd be happy to answer those questions. But I'll turn it back to Gaelan to show us a little bit more about what product marketing is.
Cool. Thanks so much, Paula. So the flow of the conversation today, I'm not sure how familiar all you fine folks are with Microsoft as an organization and as a brand. So I'll give you a little bit of an update on what we believe in and where we are to really help debunk some of the myths that some people have about our brand. I will then be kind of going through a bit more about a talk track I've developed on what it is to be a product marketing manager and what that differs from other marketing positions within an organization. My entire talk track's probably about 20-25 minutes, and that's very intentional, knowing we have the full hour. I personally get a lot more value when engaging in conversations, doing live demos, and getting questions. So I would ask everyone to hold questions until the end, and then just know I'm saving a bunch of time to kind of go over all the questions you might have, because I don't believe that what I think you need to know is more important than what you want to know. So I'm going to anchor on that, provide some context to open things up, and then we'll hand it over to the rest of you to kind of ask any questions you might have, whether it be about starting a career in technology, whether it be about marketing as a profession, whether it be about how to land your first job. Like, I'm open to all of it and happy to share. So to kick off, I'd like to kind of kick off with my road to here, where I am now. So as in my intro, I went to university at McGill. So I grew up in Toronto, around Yonge and St. Clair area. And I was actually really excited to go to Dalhousie initially. I didn't think I was going to get into McGill, to be quite frank. But I got like second round acceptances, and Dalhousie and Montreal and or Halifax, like, it was a no-brainer. Of course I want to go to Montreal. So I decided to make the venture out to Montreal to start a new university experience there out of high school. I initially went to study political science and economics. And I think I told Paula this when she first interviewed, actually, was that I think in my first semester, my first year, I realized how much of a mistake that was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Those seemed like safe things to do with a Bachelor of Arts degree. And I quickly realized that was not true. So I felt as though those big poli-sci and econ classes had, 400 people in the audience, and the professor was kind of whatever, and the readings weren't very interesting, and it's kind of like, it just wasn't for me. But simultaneously, I've always enjoyed geography classes when I was in high school. So I took some geography classes as an elective in my first semester. I'm like, oh, the classes are 20 people. The profs are super chill hippies, and there's a lot of like outdoor field work and research. And I'm like, this is so much more what I want to do. So I actually did a major in geography, and I finished off all those major courses required within my first 2 or 3 years. So from there, I was like, well, what do you do with a major in geography? And Paula's still scratching her head on that one, because I think you're also a geography major, but she's well diversified with a major in I think it's in management as well, in business, right, Paula? Yeah. So I actually decided to diversify myself out from being a granola munching hippie to also take a minor in economics and a minor in business management. So not by any means the depth of business management that you're all learning. I took like one accounting class and one finance class and one HR and one marketing class. Fun fact, I work in marketing. The one marketing class I took, I really did not like, to be quite frank, but it was like a night school course, and I don't know. Anyways, of course, McGill is where I went to school, but a lot of the hands-on experience I got was actually through summer internships. So experiences like Paula has now at working with me here at Microsoft in the education business, where I did my internships. I did my first internship at the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. And so this is an organization in the federal government that triages all the inbound claims for immigration refugee status across Canada and all our border crossings. This was an interesting. It is not really what I wanted to do, but I got an offer, so I thought, hey, I'll take it. What I learned more than anything else is that I knew I did not want to work in the public sector. It was not for me, and I definitely prefer working in the private sector where things are a bit more fast-paced. So some people love public sector. That is fantastic. I work with them every day, as the education business that I work on is entirely in the public sector realm. But yeah, that's just a personal preference of mine. Another one I did after Immigration Refugee Board of Canada was JNC Research. So I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this one before, but it's now called Sustainalytics. It actually merged with a Dutch organization. And so what they do is that they actually evaluate organizations on the TSX to understand how diverse they are, how inclusive, but also how environmental they are. And so instead of saying, oh, oil and gas is bad, do not invest there. What this research organization is that I did an internship with was that they evaluate all the companies on the TSX that are in the oil and gas industry, for instance, and say, hey, you know what? This is the best of the industry. If you're going to invest anywhere in oil and gas, because you kind of have to and you invest in the TSX, we recommend Husky, for instance, right? So what they've actually done is that they've actually built well, this is years ago when I was working on this. Was what, 2007, 2008? Wow, that's 12 years ago. Really makes me feel old. Where they are now is that they actually have an index fund. And so they've actually taken a bunch of stocks in the TSX and put them into an index. So you can actually buy a index fund of the best environmental and socially conscious organizations. And so I think that's offered through RBC. And so I actually started a little fun, Wealth Simple RSP account, I think 5 years ago, and they actually had an SRI option, a social responsible investment option. And so I actually said, yeah, I want to invest in the social responsible one. Why wouldn't I? I believe that companies that are ethical and do good for the planet are going to be more valuable in the future than organizations that don't. And so within Wealthsimple, they're actually using the JNC index to say, here's how we're going to invest in organizations in Canada that are social responsible. So that's that one. Bullfrog Power might be familiar for some folks here, but I was actually did an internship there as well, where I was helping to spread the word about how you can actually take a consumer like myself and instead of paying for electricity grid, straight up from Ontario Hydro, you can actually purchase energy from Bullfrog Power. And so what they'll do is they'll create offsets. And so if I buy X amount of energy from Bullfrog Power, they're going to inject that same amount of energy into the grid from sustainable sources, like from hydroplates or from wind or from solar. Which is pretty exciting. Even though we're heavily hydro right now in Canada, or in Ontario, sorry, we do actually have quite a lot of natural gas coming into our energy grid, and to be frank, a lot of nuclear as well. So if this is something of an interest to individuals that they want to have a more green power line into their home, instead of building a wind turbine on top of your house, you can just purchase Bullfrog Power. And so for me, I actually purchased an electric car recently. No, it's not a Tesla, it's a Kia. I don't make that much, but it's important for me that the energy that's coming into my vehicle is in fact green energy if I want to offset a lot of carbon. And then finally, Clearly So. And so this is actually after I graduated university, I went to London, England to do an internship at Clearly So. The So stands for kind of social. And so what they do is that they link up organizations that are doing that are social enterprises, a lot of small scale organizations doing a lot of really interesting green things, recycled goods, but they're actually partnering with those. So Clearly So actually acts as a broker to introduce those green organizations to angel investors. Traditional banking infrastructure does not really prioritize green organizations to that investment. So it's a really kind of an interesting way to kind of create a separate stream of investment to connect investors who want to invest more cleanly with organizations that are looking for investment. So that's kind of my university experience. So, McGill for geography, economics, and business, and a whole bunch of very different experiences in the private sector, in one public sector. But I presented to Paula in her class back in was it April, Paula? I talked to the Simon Fraser Market Association. Yeah. And I think it was April. We were like month 1 into this pandemic that we're all kind of sitting in right now. And so I led by saying, hey, I get it. Because in 2009, when I graduated university, this is what was going on. Huge economic recession from the 2008 financial crisis that was still lingering. This was really scary to be a graduate coming out of university, knowing that there really wasn't a lot of opportunities out there. And so it really required me to think differently about what I wanted to do and what does success look like for me. So while I was in my last year at McGill, of course, all the big consulting firms like McKinsey and Monitor Group and BCG and all the big banks like TD and RBC, and then also some of the consumer packaged good organizations like Procter & Gamble and Unilever, they came to do their standard tour, recruiting for entry-level positions at their organizations. And so I went through the whole interview loops, some of the big ones like McKinsey, and got to the finish line. Except in 2009, when I was applying, no one was being hired. People are being laid off these organizations. So it was an interesting time to try and start a career. So what did I do? I actually decided to do some traveling. And so I did a bike trip through the coast of Vietnam. So cycling about, I think it's 800 kilometers over 2 weeks from northern Vietnam to southern Vietnam. I understand that, for a lot of you on the call here, that's probably not an option due to a lot of stay-at-home orders and not being able to leave Canada. However, I do encourage you to use the time to brush up on the skills that you want to develop, but also to do the things you want to achieve and want to do. So you may be locked to maybe the Toronto area, but definitely look at volunteer opportunities or outdoorsy things you can do to build some great talking points. Because this was something I did 11 years ago, and it's such an important life event for me where I was doing this trip and then bouncing around Southeast Asia for a few months. That 11 years later, I'm still talking about it. I still look back on it very fondly. But then also, got to make the bills meet, and I ran out of money really quickly in Southeast Asia. So I came back to Toronto and I was actually a waiter at 2 different restaurants. And so it's a year after graduation, burnt all my money that I had or didn't really have much in Southeast Asia, then started working at 2 restaurants. Because again, there was no real jobs out there that I was aware of. And it was a tough time to understand with the skill set that I developed at McGill and off my experiences at these startups, or not startups, but at these internships, to know what I want to do. So I started working these 2 jobs as a waiter. But I was living in my mom's basement, and she kind of said, "I need you to get a real job." And I'm like, "I got 2." No, she's like, "No, you need to get a real job." So she mentioned she's a divorce lawyer, and she said, "Oh, I heard there's a lot of great jobs on Craigslist." And I'm like, "There's only one kind of job on Craigslist. I'm really looking for it." She said, "Just check it out." So I checked it out and I actually landed a internship, paid internship, which is huge, because I think back in 2010 that was really rare to find a paid internship. And this is actually a media agency called the Ava Group at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto. And so what they do is they purchase digital media. Like, this is 2010, so all the rage was Google ads and Facebook ads and even email marketing for smaller brands across Canada, and most particularly Ontario. So I was an intern on the Lava Life account. So I think we all know what Lava Life is. With they had a recent data hack where all their information their customers got released out to the public, which is pretty scary. I had nothing to do with it. That was way past my time. But also the Stratford Festival. So it was interesting. I learned a bunch about the digital media landscape, and I kind of got a knack for it. And what I really loved about this and working in this industry was that I was able to really anchor on and find a new passion of mine for data, because digital marketing, digital advertising is all about data and insights. And so that's really kind of what I discovered here. I then got an offer to do a full-time job at Mindshare. And so that's a big global WPP media agency. So if you think of the big media or creative agencies like JWT and Wonderman, this is a sister agency to all of those that do all the media flighting. So they'll have a customer, like I was on the Mazda account, Mazda cars. Yes, I love I don't have a Mazda. So they're great cars, but they're not green, so I won't buy one. But I was able to get a full-time job, and keep you totally transparent here. My first salary coming out of university, my first salary job at Mindshare was $28,000 a year. That was tough to live on in downtown Toronto. I think I came home and had a can of soup for lunch, and my apartment was, I think, 3 blocks away. So I did come home a lot, and I did save money on the TTC. My rent was $500 a month at Yonge and Bloor, where I lived above a bar. But it was another phenomenal experience where I got to learn a lot more about the marketing and advertising industry, and the importance that data has in it. From there, I actually got introduced to some folks at Microsoft, and that was the logo of Microsoft at the time when I joined. This went back when there was Xbox 360 and it was Windows 7 at the time, and it was MSN Messenger was all the rage. It was a very different Microsoft back then. And I actually got my first job in this organization as a kind of an internal media planner. So I'd flight all the media for Microsoft on its own properties. So instead of Microsoft saying, "Hey, we want to advertise Windows," instead of a big channel to advertise on at the time was like MSN and Bing. And so instead of reaching out to a media agency like a Mindshare or an Aber Group to purchase media, where you then have to pay for it and then have an agency commission on top, it's kind of like in-house promotion. So it's promoting Microsoft brands on Microsoft advertising platforms. So that was my first gig. And I was there for and I'm still here for 8 years. And so this is Microsoft today. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what Microsoft is today, and why, and just kind of refresh some perspectives on who we are and what we're trying to achieve. And then I'll talk more about product marketing, and then we'll open up for some questions, if that sounds good. So I wanted to first talk about Microsoft's impact for a better Canada. So beyond just providing software solutions, we actually have a really interesting footprint across Canada. We are ranked the #1 place to work by Glassdoor. We've provided a bunch of research grants, 7 million for McGill in Montreal for research and innovation, lots of employees, lots of partners. We actually have a really strong footprint in this country in terms of what we try to achieve. And so it's definitely not just about revenue. I mean, revenue is very important for a publicly traded organization, but it's also a really important thing about community. And I think a lot of companies say that, and I'm sure they mean it. I think what I love about this slide in particular is showing what we're actually doing about it. So Paula has only been here about 2 or 3 weeks, and I think maybe Paula, you can probably jump in here about your perceptions here about what Microsoft actually wants to achieve in terms of diversity and inclusion and connecting with communities. So I want to pump it over to Paula to kind of put her on the spot here.
Sure, yeah. So I think going in, I had a very, I thought at least it was a very clear assumption of what the business looked like and what the priorities are. But it's so exciting and interesting to see how ingrained diversity and inclusion priorities are in pretty much every decision that is happening within the business. I think even just like jumping back, I think a week or two, we're sitting down to put together kind of what my structure looks like for what I should be focusing on for the next 8 months. And within every subpoint pretty much of my priorities was why are we doing this and why is this important for not just the business, but the people within Canada, and what kind of direct impact can we have on them? So at least in my time, I'm really excited to be working on some of the Indigenous outreach that the company is going to be doing, as well as I'm really looking forward to working with the women's group and finding ways to empower women across the country in various ways. But I'm super excited about how ingrained and built diversity and inclusion priorities are into pretty much all of the decisions that happen within the business. It's so exciting to go into a meeting and hear someone bring up well, why are we doing this? How does this impact people? Like, what are the other considerations that we should look at in terms of making sure that diversity is inclusion or diversity is prioritized or inclusion is top of mind when making these choices? And I think that definitely comes across as well, even with some of the products that you might have used within the Microsoft suite. So, I mean, Gaelan, maybe do you want to touch on a little bit like some of the really cool features within Teams, for example, within the education space? I think that's a really great example.
Yeah, I think that's what's really beautiful here is that every single employee of Microsoft is committing to diversity and inclusion. Just like we commit to driving impact for the business, we're all committed to actually put in our commitments to the organization in terms of how we're going to be measured and tracked, what we're going to do to drive a more inclusive workplace for each other, but also a more inclusive experience for our customers. And so when you think about that, as a marketer myself, the question is, how do I make more inclusive and diverse marketing executions? So how am I connecting with communities like Indigenous populations, Black folks, folks with different abilities within how we communicate to them, but also about what the programs we establish. That's just a marketer, right? You think about the tens of thousands of engineers at our head office in Seattle, and you can really begin to see right now all the impact that's being made in terms of how we're making inclusive technology. And so I'm happy to show you probably at the end of this presentation some of these really cool things that we're being baked into our technology to be accessible to everyone, especially in the education space that you're all in right now. But it really is just phenomenal that not only is an organization like Microsoft able to drive inclusion and diversity and accessibility, but we're able to achieve our own personal goals because of it. And so my personal goals as a queer man, I'm able to leverage the platform of Microsoft to advance things that I believe in. And so we're hosting an event in a month from now with Product Work Canada that we're talking about how large organizations that have a global impact that are based in the US or in Canada or in Europe can leverage their platform and their footprint they have in countries that are not as inclusive for LGBTQ plus individuals. And that's just really exciting. It's exciting just Gaelan Love on his own on a POTUS pedestal is trying to say, hey, be more inclusive. Country that's not very inclusive right now doesn't really mean much. To do it from Microsoft, where Microsoft's putting its name beside yours, being like, hey, listen to Gaelan, he's one of us, and this is important for what he believes in, and guess what, we believe in it too. So that's a really exciting thing that Microsoft allows us to accomplish. And so on that, The Microsoft mission. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Very lofty. I think that our first mission back in the 90s or 80s and 90s was, I'm not sure if y'all know this already, but a PC on every desk. The goal was get Windows friggin' everywhere. And it pretty much achieved that. And now we had to pivot. I mean, the world was not about Windows anymore. It wasn't about the PC. It's about the cloud. It's about inclusion technology. It's about empowering every person and every organization. And I think the really interesting thing here is actually to achieve more and to talk more about what achieving more means. You have to really kind of understand what Microsoft's all about. And so when you think of brands like Apple, the first thing you think of Apple is like, it's cool, it's sexy, it's slick, it has a bit of a premium, but it has a lot of luxury feel to it as well. When you think about a brand like Amazon, you think of fast, reliable, you think of retail, getting what you want really quickly, really cheaply. When you think about a brand like Google, it's trying to give you information, it's trying to be in your pocket and to have a better understanding of you. When you think about Microsoft, a lot of folks innately think about a platform for success. And so that's really built off our productivity suite with Office 365 and the applications in there like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But I think what we're trying to do now is we're expanding that brand to just not be about office and productivity. It's about achievement. And so we're trying to bring that to a broad range of different products across the board. So when you're an organization like Microsoft, you actually have a massive opportunity, but responsibility. So this is downtown New York City. I think this is like 1910, 1915. This is what it looked like. It was kind of chaos. The streets, you had some streetcars running, you had people kind of walking everywhere. It wasn't really a lot of, understanding where the car is supposed to be. Look, in the middle of the street, there's a parking lot. Like, what? I think actually somewhere in the corner, someone told me there's actually a horse and buggy. Like, this is very new into the arrival of the car. The world has changed so much in the past 100 years. And this is kind of what that same intersection looks like today, right? That parking lot's gone. You really definitely won't see a horse unless a cop is mounted on top. But digital transformation is happening really quickly. And in fact, what we're seeing right now is that in the past 2 months, we've seen about 2 years worth of digital transformation. And so this is actually a statement from our CEO back in, I think it was like May timeframe. And it's a comment about what we've seen with the COVID pandemic. And so the things that we were talking about as Microsoft, but also across the tech industry as a whole, are now way more important than they ever been before. And before, when we were trying to promote these ideas of this is what the future looks like, a lot of organizations, be it public sector or in the private sector, were like, yeah. It's on our roadmap. We'll get there. Things like curbside pickup or remote development. The big one I work on, secure remote teamwork or remote learning, telehealth services, remote selling. Pretty much, how can technology be a window to achieving all the things you would previously done in the past? But the digital transformation is now more urgent than ever. And in fact, 80% of business leaders across all industries, including public sector, are saying, hey, we got to be snapping quickly. And so we actually did a lot of really big deals within the Office 365 platform with organizations across Canada over the past 5-6 years, where they're already on these on-prem solutions like Exchange on-prem, or they're on things like Word 2016 or something, right, or Word 2013. What happened was that they purchased Office 365, which is the cloud solution that they know that they need to be more agile and more secure. But deployment wasn't really a priority, and driving usage wasn't a priority. All of a sudden, in this pandemic, this became incredibly important. So I think in the 4 months after the pandemic, I think as a organization, we trained about 140,000 end users how to use our technology, and a lot of that came from the federal government. And so the federal government purchased a lot of Office 365 licenses with the intention to roll it out when they were ready. But they were kind of working on-prem. So if you think about a Ministry of Defense office or Ministry of Finance, they may not even be laptops in some of these places. They may actually still be desktop computers. What do you do when you can't have your employees come to the office anymore? You need laptops, but you also need a cloud platform for collaboration. And so all of a sudden, a bunch of people that were in critical industries, like our government functioning, couldn't come to the office anymore. And they turned to organizations like Microsoft and said, we need your help. we need your help to help us figure out how we're going to be a more agile organization, embracing digital transformation to allow our employees to collaborate anywhere from home. And so the big opportunity here for us, and there should be no surprise for anyone on the line here, is that it's all about data right now. Data from how employees interact with each other, data from your operations, data from how you design products. If you are building a technology, if you're a CTO, Chief Technology Officer of an organization, big or small, and you're building your infrastructure, does your technology stack look like? Let's say you're using Slack for chat. You're using Zoom for your collaboration videos. You're using G Suite for what you would be doing for word processing or PowerPoints or slide development. You might be hosting a lot of your applications on Amazon Web Services. You'll be using an ERP, an enterprise resource platform like a NetSuite within Oracle. What you have there is you have a bunch of data that's now separated out between a bunch of different providers. There's no real, you cannot harness the full power of that data if it's all disconnected, if it's all distributed across different organizations. And so what our major value prop is that we have solutions that can be work across an organization. And so take all that data and harness it to its full potential and create a really strong digital feedback loop. And so how are you leveraging your data and the intelligence behind that to empower your employees to achieve more, to engage your customers in more dynamic and fluid ways, to transform your products and your development process, but also to optimize your operations? Every single data point that you have that is disconnected from a single data intelligence graph is a lost opportunity to do better as an organization. And so an incredibly competitive environment right now, not being able to harness all the data you have is an extreme way to disadvantage yourself against your competitive stack. And so what it really comes down to when you think about this data intelligence is how are you going to build a singular cloud solution for all? And so this is where the Microsoft Cloud comes in. So we have our Microsoft Azure, which is our cloud infrastructure service that runs all of our cloud solutions. And it's also available for developers and enterprise organizations to develop upon. And within that platform, there's incredible important security component. How you're managing your access of individuals, how are you managing cyber threats and modern IT security, but also what's your collaboration platform for employee productivity, like Microsoft 365 with Microsoft Teams that we're on right now, or Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all the other things that are coming in that package. What about the Microsoft Power Platform? And so this is a really big thing that's going to be happening right now in the next few years. And I encourage you all as potential product marketers to explore this more. It's something that I'm exploring, and Paul and I are writing an exam on this soon, but it's how we're embracing low code, no code solutions. So instead of having a giant wall between what a developer is and all the training and computer science you need to understand to build it, to build enterprise applications, that's now going away. There's a new concept of the citizen developer, an individual who can develop on their own, using the tools provided within an organization and the data within an organization. I can actually build custom applications, and that's me as a marketer. I can build a custom application without knowing, how to write in Python or knowing how to use SQL servers. Like I can do it within a drag and drop environment, which is really exciting. And then finally is Microsoft Dynamics. Think about that as like business applications. So your marketing platform, your HR platform, your CRM platform for engaging and managing contacts. So when you have that all within a single environment, what you have is the ability for a truly transformational experience for an organization to leverage all that data to truly transform. Because the pace of innovation, it's absolutely insane. So in 2020, where we are right now, IoT devices represent 2x the PC, smartphones, and tablet environment. So that's all the Nest thermostats, my Fitbit, but it's also way beyond the consumer stack. Like if you think about an industrial organization that's manufacturing products, there are IoT centers now across all the different phases of how a product is developed, so that you can actually have predictive maintenance. So instead of waiting for this really small component to break down in your t-shirt manufacturing facility, you can actually get real-time insights on how that specific component is doing and when it needs to be repaired. So you can actually repair it predictably before it breaks down, so you don't lose 2 weeks waiting for the repair person to come in to fix it. In 2020, we also have exponential growth and shrinking half-life of data, so 44 zettabytes of the world's data. This is a crazy number, and there's actually a real concern about analysis paralysis. That's the concept that, you know, with so much data, it's overwhelming. What can we do with all this, right? So it's really about how are you harnessing and leveraging that data to drive innovation with your organization, and that really ties in well with AI. And so how are we generating value with AI? And so there's $2.9 of business value in 2021, 2.9 trillion. That's bigger than Apple computers, if you think about that. Because I think they just hit 2 trill about a month ago, and then they dipped down. Whatever. I think the market capitalization of Microsoft right now is like 1.8. So like this is like a Microsoft and an Apple almost, right? In value of AI solutions. So this is insane. And then also mixed reality. This is a really exciting piece of the business that we're very excited about. It's how we're making mixed reality come to life. And the real core tenet here is that mixed reality or augmented reality or virtual reality, they all kind of sit in that single term of mixed reality. What it's really doing is it's freeing people from screens. Instead of having a monitor in front of me and a monitor on my phone and a monitor on my laptop, and how are we thinking about making the computing world be ubiquitous around us? And so it might be a goggle lens, it might be a contact lens, and there's a lot of ideas of what this is going to look like. Right now, it's kind of like a headset. We have a unit called HoloLens that makes this come to life. But what we're going to be seeing is that monitors are going to go away. Like the world's not going to be about keyboards, mice, and a monitor in the near future. It's going to change rapidly, and so Microsoft is really committed to being ahead of all these things. And so I focus more on the workplace piece of the business, but more particularly about the student side of it. And there's some really interesting stats here within the mobile and social, diverse and global, and then team-based and collaborative space. But in a nutshell, the way that we do work is changing really fast. Funny enough, 72% of our workers will be working remotely by 2020. Hey, try like 95% now. It slides a little old, I guess. But also, one really important thing here is that there's actually 5 generations of the workforce today, whether it be the Gen Zs all the way up to the baby boomers. There's a lot of different people who are raised in different economic but also social climates, and who are all in 2020 together through this pandemic, trying to figure out how to work together. And so what's interesting is that, as a bunch of students, you probably all work in a similar clip. You all kind of collaborate in the same places, know the same lingo. But when you're trying to work with a professor potentially, who might be on a bit more on the gray side, they might be operating a different clip, and it might be kind of funny to you. Or it might be just something you would lean into more. But what's really important here is that when you're in a workplace like a Microsoft, you're working across a bunch of different diverse backgrounds, a bunch of different generations. You need to figure out how you can communicate on a similar platform together. On that, I think I'll just breeze through some of these more slides. I'm actually surprised how much time I'm taking up. I'm sorry. I'll skip this actually. So there's a big shift in the dynamics of the workplace where we're in this. There's an old world where information is scarce, and there's static hierarchies, and you're how to compete. And it's all about the individual, and it's really changing. And we're feeling that really heavily. Where in a world where information is abundant and you're all collaborating to win, we need to make sure we have tools to help. I'm going to save the video. It's a great video, but it's like 6 minutes. So maybe we'll come back to that if there's not enough questions. I will talk now about what it means to be a PMM. So PMM is a product marketing manager, and there's actually a bunch of different things that work in the marketing space. So if you think about roles in the marketing profession, there's things like events marketers, there's social media marketers, there's content marketers, there's integrated marketers, there's data marketers, but there's also product marketers. And so what a product marketer does, at the end of the day, this picture, what it says to me, it's empowerment. What I try to make my platform and how I approach my work is that I want to make my focus on how I'm empowering others. How can I be a quarterback? How can I be a leader? How can I be a central spoke, a hub to make sure that others are successful? Because when others are successful, that's where I see myself as being successful. And so on that, I'll kind of review. Ooh, does one click through? Oh. Let's see. There we go. What does a PMM do? Or how does the PMM do it? So I think the first thing that PMM does is it provides clarity. And so I think there's a lot of things that happen in a business. And an organization like Microsoft, there are lots An overwhelming amount of priorities, an overwhelming amount of resources and people and customers. I think what's really important for a product marketing manager to do is provide clarity. What is the insight? What is the focus? Because there is an abundance of things to do, not all that can be done. How can I provide the clarity to the business that here are the things that will be most impactful for our business? And what the impact means is maybe change for different businesses. For myself, impact means not so much about revenue in terms of how much we sell into educational institutions in Canada, but more about the value attained by those customers. So I'm primarily measured on what the active usage is of our tools. And so if you think about what my main two tools I work with that I promote are Microsoft Teams, but also Windows 10. And so I'm measured on how often people use these products on a monthly basis. So we're all in this Teams call together using Teams, which is great. I got a really aggressive number in terms of how many people in Canada should be using Microsoft Teams in the education segment on a monthly basis. We've seen exponential growth. I can't tell you the numbers because it's obviously confidential, but I was kind of showing Paula the numbers. I think your mouth kind of dropped like, oh my God. There are about 7 million people in Canada who are in education, whether it be a student, an administrator, a faculty member. The number of folks who were using Teams, just a year ago to the net that is today has changed dramatically. And the big approach that I have is how to make sure that everyone understands the full value of the tool they have in front of them. And so if you think about it, with an audience size of 7 million, that is a lot of people to talk to. That's almost like a consumer audience that you would want to talk to. But I don't have the consumer audience marketing budget. So it's all about prioritization. So my focus really isn't, the biggest audience within that set is students. How can I get students to use Microsoft Teams? But with the lack of budget and resources, the strategy is not about trying to talk to all the students. It's actually about trying to talk to all the IT departments and make them our allies to help drive the adoption within their organization, but also how are we enabling educators, faculty, and teachers to leverage technology. So if I can convince one teacher to use Teams instead of a Zoom, it's not just a one active user, it's actually a 30, because they might have a class of 30 students in K-12, right? So that's where the priority really has to focus in, because there's no shortage of opportunities for us to do marketing to students or to parents. And those are really important things, but it's important to be strategic and drive clarity in the business to say, those are important, but the more impactful route is doing this. The next one is to be accountable. And so accountability is an interesting one. At the end of the day, someone has to own the numbers. And so a lot of the time, it's the product marketing manager that owns the metrics, the numbers. So a events marketer might have metrics that they're measured on, like how many people attended an event, or how many events you did, or how many of those event attendees then transacted to something, right? If you're a data manager, you might be thinking about what kind of insights you're pulling out. If you're a integrated marketing manager, you might be thinking about how many newsletter signups you got, or how many folks entered into your marketing automation system. When you're a product marketing manager, you're owning the business metric. So my metrics I own are the revenue of the business in the segment for education, but also the usage numbers. And so those aren't marketing metrics, they are business metrics. So I think the product marketing role is kind of the bridge between marketing and the business. So you are kind of a spoke between the marketing departments. You speak that language, but you're also interfacing with the partner ecosystem, with customers, with the sales organization. Yeah, so it's important to, an accountability to own your number, to be accountable to it, to report on it, treat it as your own. You may not be able to influence every single piece of it, but at the end of the day, you're the one reporting on it. Big one for me is about integrity. There are a lot of different ways to get a job done. What's most importantly is that you're doing it the right way. And so for me, driving a culture where people are respectful, and you're honest with each other, when you have ethics and you operate with integrity, it sounds like a no-brainer, but there are a lot of shortcuts in the private sector that you can do. And a lot of them you can get away with. But the important thing is that I believe firmly that bring things to the light and you can't do wrong. I'd rather be transparent. I'd rather be ethical. I'd rather be responsible and respectful of others in order to get things done, because that's how I want others to work with me. I don't like finding surprises in the business where there may be some dishonesty. I don't like finding in the business that there might be some ethical dilemmas that were not exposed to me. And so I think it's important for anyone, not just a PMM, to operate with integrity. And finally, I think one important thing that PMM does is you celebrate. You have to be an evangelist. I think you have to be at the front end. A lot of sales folks they're so focused on their sales number that they're not really as focused on how does this technology make people feel. And that's where the big connection point is for product marketing manager, is that you're trying to invoke a sentiment, a feeling within your audience base. So I bet a lot of folks will be asking what skills are needed to be as successful as a PMM. And so I think the first one here is about data. And so I think I introduced my journey when I was talking about when I first started working in the digital marketing space. That kind of really set me up for a lot of success in the role I'm in today. As Paula can attest to this, I kind of live in Excel, probably to a detriment. But this is really important. And I think I would encourage all of you who want to explore careers in marketing, not just in product marketing, to really get comfortable with data. Whether it be about doing advanced functions in Excel, whether it be VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, that's like an expected mandatory at this point, but also being able to analyze data and grab insights and leverage those insights to make an idea. And so it's one thing to be exposed to data. It's another thing to be able to control and harness data. It's another thing to make data accessible to others through analysis, but then to translate that analysis into insights. Everyone in a marketing position is looking for insights, and quite often a lot of people look towards the product marketing manager for those insights. I think you also need to be an innate leader. You need to be able to not just lead people, but to be able to influence. And I say influence, I don't mean trick people. I think it's about influencing your priorities to be others' priorities, because you are representing the business priorities. And so how do you be able to influence and evangelize ideas to others, through others, and then with others? And so I'll say it again, because it's actually a really important statement. How do you work to or with others? How do you work through others? And how do you work with others? So an important thing here to really kind of digest. Also, you need to be innately collaborative. This is a really important skill set, and I think the really important thing here with collaboration is to acknowledge your own biases and to not just ask for ideas and support, but to genuinely want to understand different perspectives. And I think that's the beautiful thing about a workplace like Microsoft that wants to be more diverse and inclusive, is that we want diversity and inclusion because it brings in new perspectives. And so one of the major things that Paula adds to the role as she comes into it, and the reason why there's only so many intern opportunities at Microsoft, but there's always been an intern on the education business. And the reason why is because having someone who is of a student generation means so much in terms of how we can leverage the insights and perspectives of those individuals. So having an intern working on our database server business, great, that's really important. But would you prioritize someone, a student in the database business or with the student or in the education business? It's no brainer, education. However, when you're looking to hire for an individual in the database business, you might want to hire someone who has a diverse perspective, who has a background in understanding about database servers or advanced analytics. So collaboration is all about diversity and inclusion in my mind. And then finally, this is an important one. I found this the other day. I'm like, oh, this blew my mind. This is all about prioritization and understanding, building a little bit of a diagram here. What is low risk or what's high risk? What is low cost versus high cost? What is low effort? What is high effort? And what's of low value and high value? If you can map out the priorities or the things that are expected to do against this grid, you're going to be really successful in trying to find the place that will be the most impactful. So obviously, you want to do things that are low risk, that are low cost, and high value. That's a prioritized place. But if there are things that are high risk and low effort and low value and high cost, like, oh my God, of course avoid those things. So when there's a lot going on in business, it's easy to get excited about all the things that are happening. And it's important to kind of layer all the things that are opportunities in front of you against a grid like this to understand where should you prioritize your time, because every single person at Microsoft is busy. Always. No one's got a spare moment. There's no shortage of things to do, but what we're measured on is the impact that we have. And so it's how do you prioritize your time to do the things that are most impactful to the business. finally, my last slide. This is about a concept I've walked through many times before that I personally love. It's called Icky Guy. I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with this before, but it's the Japanese concept for a meaning for being, or a reason for being. And so what it is, as I know a lot of you are probably thinking about what your careers next look like after graduation, I'd really empower you to meditate on this for a bit and really consider what this is trying to explore here. But it's easy to, when you graduate, to say, hey, I'm good at marketing and Microsoft will pay me money. Therefore, you're kind of in this profession space. Nothing wrong with that, but you're not really balanced in your Icky Guy. Because the question is what you're good at. Is it really what you love doing? And more importantly, is it what the world needs? And so this is where I feel like I've attained a sense of Icky Guy in this role I'm in today, where I'm working in the education business, because obviously it's what I'm good at is data analytics and collaboration with others. What I love is I love working with really passionate people. I love being in an organization that empowers others. What the world needs, there's no doubt right now that the world needs a bit of help in terms of how we're keeping education going. I was walking by my dog passing a school the other day, on the first day, watching all the grade and the kindergartens line up in the front of the school and thinking, how long they got? 3 weeks? 4 weeks until they shut down here in Ontario? Like, it's what do they do then? How do you have a kindergarten online? How can Microsoft technology help? And that's what's really exciting for me. And then finally, what you can be paid for. And so, it's important to have a stable living. And so finding a business, a job, an organization where you can balance out what the world needs. That's what you believe in. I think you got a sense from the beginning that I care about LGBTQ rights. I care about the environment. I care about inclusion. What you love doing, what you're good at, what you can be paid for. So I encourage you all maybe to screenshot that or remember Icky Guy, like, hey, that guy's gross, Icky Guy. Maybe that'll help you stick it in your head. But really harness this. And I use this every time I talk to students. I bring this up and to encourage you all to reflect on this. And then finally, questions. Oh, so I was really hoping for a talk track of like 25 minutes. We went 50. I'm sorry. That was double time. So I do have 10 minutes here to take any questions you have. So I'm going to turn my slides off so I can see you all, because I've just been looking at slides and time. I'm sure you're all there, with smiling faces on video. So I'm going to pop in over here. Hi, everyone. Questions?
All right, so I'm going to lead the questions here for you, Gaelan. We have a couple in the chat. So the first one was, can you talk about some of the strategies around increasing adoption of a product?
Yeah, adoption is interesting, because before there is an adoption, there's two stages. There's purchase, which requires IT buy-in or business leader buy-in. There's deployment. Just because you purchase something doesn't mean it's actually out there and available. You have to move and migrate. So if you're on a traditional ERP, or if you're on G Suite and you're trying on Office 365, you got to get people moved. You got the IT to actually move things over. So once you're moved onto the platform, how you're driving adoption, it's interesting. It's about working through others, I say at the core. And so how are you approaching empowering others in the organization? I don't think you can expect to train every single end user at the federal government, which is about like 800,000 people. I think what you can really strive for is how you can empower and train and influence the ones that count. How can you work with the marketing department or all the managers in the organization, or how do you provide the right resources to IT to make sure that they have what they need?
Awesome. Do you have specific steps then, if someone is looking to start like an online business and wanting to get their product out there? Do you have any specific steps?
I've never done it myself, so I'm not sure I have something so specific. I'd say the best thing you can do is find others, find people who have done something similar and ask them, probably not me. But to also don't think of yourself as alone. I think that's the important thing, is that if you're building an application or something, how can your application work with other applications? How can you, because I think driving that first initial user base is critically important. And the important strategy we have at Microsoft is that we are well aware there's a whole bunch of different software solutions out there that people use, and a lot of them are not competitive. Rather, they're collaborative. They can partner with us. So there's things in Microsoft Teams and within Azure and Dynamics and all that you can actually have third-party software integrated in. So whatever your app is, whether it be commercial or consumer focused, I'd encourage you to think about what other software exists that is not competitive but could be complementary, and try and build relationships with it.
Awesome. I think that's super helpful. So we have, I think, Nindia, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who just wants to first thank you for the presentation. And then also, this might go to Paula and yourself, just about, it can be challenging to get into a company like Microsoft and super competitive. And do you have any tips that would make an application stand out among others?
Oh my God, that's a Paula question. Paula, how'd you get into Microsoft? What'd you do?
I don't know how I got here, honestly, but no, I'm just kidding. I was, funny enough, I personally was running a program kind of similar to this, I'm guessing, but it was student focused about how to find opportunities in the marketing space. And we really wanted to learn a little bit about more about the tech industry. So I actually just blindly reached out to Gaelan on LinkedIn, to be honest. And he was very open to doing a case with us, which was great. But actually through that opportunity, like that was kind of how I found that I actually was super passionate about the space, and that was something I wanted to pursue. So we stayed in touch, and I was looking for future opportunities. But I think a really big thing, at least when I was putting together my application, was understanding like there's so many students out there. What specifically do you bring to the table, and like why do you think for that specific role that you're applying? Like for me in education, I thought that was super exciting just because of like the fact that it's a space to actually empower other students, which in some of my passion projects, like that's something I've been super excited about. So I think it's not only just understanding that it's a great role and like you think it would be a good fit, but demonstrating where that difference is and showing exactly what you bring to the table beyond what is just like in a standard student application, I think is the biggest thing. And then also entrepreneurial drive. So like, what have you done outside of just being in the student space, being in the education space, that's really shown that you will like you can come up with an idea, brainstorm an idea, and then execute on it. I don't know. That's kind of what I at least put into my application. Gaelan, if there was anything else that you wanted to add.
Yeah, you killed it. You got the job, so you did something right there, Paula. So I wouldn't say you're wrong. I'd say when a role gets posted at an organization like a Microsoft, like I think actually I was just in a session this morning about inclusive hiring practices at Microsoft, and they had some by the numbers, and like I think Microsoft has about 140,000 employees globally. In the past year, we've hired 45,000 people. Like there's just natural turnover. But we've of all the job postings, we've had like 31.5 million views on the job postings, with about 100,000 or 100 million page views like in total, and like I think a total of like I think 4.5 million applications. So Paula, I can tell you right now, when you applied for the role, there were about 350 other student applicants. And so I think the question here is, how do you stand out from the stack? And I'd say the fundamentals are not enough anymore, which is a crisp resume. I don't think myself, I don't have a resume over one page. Getting a student resume that's over a page is like, really? You're a student and you've got more than a page of content? I don't think so. I'd encourage you to reduce that to a page, but to be intelligent about how you build your resume. It's got to be easy to digest, but then also you be very conscious that there's a lot, and understand how do I say this? Understand how an organization goes through resumes is really important, right? And so before anyone looks at your resume, it's run through an AI algorithm. Are you got the right keywords? Are they understanding, like, is this a real school or is it a fake school? Like, is this a real company or is this a fake company? Like they're running through these kinds of things. Do they have to do the right keywords in terms of the skills they're looking for? It's because no HR person is looking at a stack of 350 resumes. They're probably looking at a stack of 20. And so from that 20, that stack then gets reduced. So they might go through the 20 and say, hey, before I pass this over to the hiring manager, I'm going to bring the hiring manager 6 resumes. So I got to get rid of 14. So what do you think they're going to do as a human to remove applications, right? How can you make sure you stand about that? And then once you're in that application pool of 6 that go to the hiring manager might only interview 2 or 3. So they're going to get rid of 3 more people. And then within that revenue pool of the interview pool of 3, they're going to get rid of 2, right? So it's kind of a deduction game. And so the question is, it's important about how do you make you stand out? And I think what's important here is that a resume and application, just by looking at the odds, isn't enough. I think you need to figure out how can you network and build a relationship with folks within an organization, because the internal referral get to the top of the stack, but also knowing about a job before it's even posted gets you ahead of it too. So just as important and nervous as you all are to get an exciting job at an organization that you want to work in, it's equally, if not more so, as anxiety-ridden for a hiring manager to get the right person in as well, because not every person is as fantastic as they say they are. And so it's important to have a really healthy and diverse application pool. So how are you going to stand out? That's what's really important here. And how do you bridge to make a relationship before the roles being posted? So Paula reached out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, very similar to this event here, do you want to do a presentation or a case study? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, I wasn't looking for an intern at the time, but I knew, hey, I might have an intern, but it's not going to turn over until August. But sure enough, I had to start looking for a new intern, I think in June or something. And so that's when I reached out to Paula, be like, hey, I don't know if you're interested, but like I think we hit it off. Like there's an internship in my team if you want to explore it. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So we had 350 applications. Because I said, as a hiring manager, I said, hey, Paula's great. I think she applied. Can you make sure she's in the stack? HR's like, yeah, whatever you want. Let's make sure she's in the stack. She's in the interview loop. We interview 4 or 5 candidates, and it's like, I've done the due diligence to see what HR brought forward within their recruit efforts, but I also know, and then through the hiring process, I brought other people in, like my older co-op, and then also a business partner of mine, and we all agreed, yeah, she's the one. So be bold to reach out, but don't just ask for favors. Bring value to the table.
Awesome. I think that's really helpful. I think a lot of people will get value out of what you just went over, both of you.
I hope so.
We have a few more questions kind of back towards like the project marketing side of things. So first of all, is a project marketing manager tasked with aspects like pricing and mapping the competitive landscape for their specific products?
Yeah, it depends on the organization. So in terms of pricing, I don't do much on pricing side because a lot of our pricing is established at a head office level. So if you're working for a Canadian company like a Shopify or something, right? Yeah, you'll probably, as a product marketing manager, you'll probably be involved in those conversations. If you're working for a global company with a subsidiary office in Canada, like a Microsoft or a Google or Amazon, you may not be in those pricing conversations. However, you can definitely help influence those conversations at the corp level, because corp is saying the price doesn't mean they're right. So they're always looking for local feedback in terms of what that looks like. And then the compete piece, absolutely. So I'm not scanning for new competitors in terms of, what competitors are in the Canadian environment for telecommunication software. We know it's Cisco WebEx, it's Google Meet, it's Zoom. There might be some other things popping up here and there, but I lean on the corporate head office to do a lot of that, a lot of the infrastructure and research behind that. What I'm providing is a lot of the insights. Here's what we're seeing. Here are the detections that we've seen within our space and what's going on, and how we can build strategies to address it.
Awesome. I think we're just going to do one more question, if you're okay going a little bit over time. So where can one acquire industry knowledge or skills specifically in product marketing? Like, is there industry training or certifications out there that you would recommend that students undertake if they're interested in this field?
Yeah, I'd say check out the CMA, the Canadian Marketing Association. They actually have a certification they're creating. So just like there's a CPA, a Certified Professional Accountant, they're creating the Certified Marketing Professional, CMP, I believe it's called. So that's there. I'd say focus less on the certifications and more about the skills behind it, right? Because anyone can take an exam and pass it with some cramming, but like what's really underneath the hood of it is where you want. And so that's a lot more skill-based. And so I'd say, think of what the skills are that product marketing manager needs to have. And I think at the top of the list, I'd say, is data analytics. And so understanding and really buffing yourself up with, whether it be statistical software or Excel or Power BI, Tableau, all those kinds of things. Those are really valuable skills. And there are certifications behind there you can definitely attain if that's important. And that's just more of a check mark. If you got on your resume, yeah, they have a certification in Power BI. It's a proof point that you have it. I'd say if you do have it, you have to know it, because I think, Paula, if you start your first day without knowing what a VLOOKUP was, I think you have a really rough first day. So it's not just to have the certifications, to have the skill set underneath as well.
Awesome. Well, that's been super helpful. And I want to thank you so much, Gaelan, for taking the time out of your day to share with all of us some of the insights into the world of product marketing. And Paula, you too, for taking some time to share your insights into the whole process. And yeah, we are a bit over time, but I'm going to hand it back to Anurag to kind of just conclude the session. But yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, and thank you, Paula and Gaelan. This has been tremendous, awesome insights into the world of product marketing. I have just one question for you guys. When you're looking at product marketing interns, are you looking at, how many times of the year are you doing this, or is it just maybe over the summer going through to the end of the year?
Yeah, so we tend to not do summer interns. We did this summer is for master's students, MBA students with a very specific project. But as Paula, I think Paula's about a month in and still like, what the hell is going on? It takes like a year to understand this place. So 4-month interns don't really learn very much. That you actually get skills to contribute to the business. They just kind of like get to know how our systems work and then they're out. So we're always doing intern cycles, and it's not just in the summertime. We look for 8-month to 12-month co-ops. I'd say it's not just in education or in marketing. There's a lot of different other roles as well, whether it be in finance, sales, or in operations. Definitely check out the Microsoft career site if this is of interest to you. I think they actually are evergreen job postings for interns and co-ops, so definitely apply to those. But more importantly, what do you want to do? LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool to find people. I'd say if you know what kind of role you want and to be specific about it, find the person who does it or is close to it to be an advocate to learn more, so you can actually be aware of the job posting before it's ever posted. The best time to apply for a job is before it's even available.
That's great. Thanks for that tip. I know Microsoft is advertising a few roles right now. For those of you who are looking for winter positions, we do have a finance as well as a business analyst position, which is live currently on CSM. Just as a reminder, those jobs do close day after tomorrow. So if you're interested, don't miss that deadline. Thank you. Thanks again, Gaelan and Paula. Any last words before we close?
Best of luck. Please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat. Again, think about how to diversify your skill set, but also lean on that diversity of your perspective that you bring. We all are unique individuals, and at Microsoft, we don't want to hire someone who's techie and someone who's a straight white man in his 40s in Seattle. Like we're really trying to focus on who we are as individuals, but also what we do with that, right? So what perspective do you bring, but how do you bring it to life? And how is that of a benefit to an organization like a Microsoft? Really reflect on that one.
Awesome. Thank you, Gaelan, and thank you to everyone else who joined us today. We hope to see you all at our next hashtag event. Have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.